In this video, I will make a review of the Ego Film processor. It's a processor for the Patterson tank system. You can develop color or black and white film and also can develop the paper. And this is exactly what we will do today. I will print the photo from the color paper with the Array 4 process and see how the Ego Film processor can handle that. This kit was provided with the Ego team. And because I have only Patterson number 2, they also sent me Patterson number 5. Because today we will develop the paper, and for the color paper development you need a reel set with a reel number 5. In the box I have one fragile box, it's over packaging, and the new Patterson drum number 5. So far everything professionally and really nice packed. So let's open the box and check what we have inside. I saw several times Ego Film processor, but I never bought it, but was always curious how it works and what it can do. And now on the table I have a small Darkroom kit that everybody can use it for paper or color film or black and white film development. You can say this is a full comparison to the Yobo drum system. So it means you can develop film, you can develop paper, or you can develop it in standing position, rotation position. You can also develop paper up to the maximum size what I can produce in my darkroom. Base kit looks like this, so you have inside 2 reels and normal number 2 drum from the Patterson. Unit comes also with a separate lead, which is standard for the Patterson drum, so you can use the drum even without the Ego Film processor in a classic way. The kit itself have a really great manual, you can also download the digital manual, and basically describes what it can do and describes how easily you can upload and download the software, how to load the film, and basic manuals for the beginner if it's your first film processor. For minimal kit you actually can use just a simple sink with the warm water and the Ego processor to develop your color film. But today I will develop the paper, so I need the special mount for the paper inside the Patterson drum. The big difference between the Yobo and the Patterson system that the Patterson system actually is static and everything is rotating inside on the reels. In Yobo drums it's actually opposite, the drum itself rotates and basically the liquids stay static, and for that you need a special cage where you will locate your paper, which will be rotated inside the chemicals. This attachment for paper is quite nice, it's rigid and it's 3D printed, and I think it will last for a long period of time and looks like a great product. And also if anything breaks you can buy the replacement part from the Ego processing team. In the supply box you also have a charging cable and 2 stems for the manual rotation of the reel inside the drum. Also you have adapter for the old style of Patterson tanks. So let's check what the Ego processor can do and what is the main functions of the processor itself. As you probably already see or probably already know from the different reviews, the Ego Film processor is basically smart lead for the Patterson tank system. The main 2 functions, it can rotate the reel inside the Patterson tank in a horizontal way, so it became a horizontal rotation development system, more like a Yobo drum system. And because it's a smart lead for the Patterson tank, it also can develop black and white and can develop color and also can develop the color paper. If you're familiar with the black and white development or with a test rotation film development, you basically can set up the development of the black and white film, and the Ego Film processor will adjust the time for your development based on the temperature of your solution. It will provide you consistency and also will provide you with additional repeatability in the different conditions, and you can develop the film in the different areas, for example if you travel or if you have different temperature around the season. From the beginning I was curious how the processor itself made to be waterproof, and so far I see that it's using sealed bearings inside the case, and the panel on front looks like industrial panel, and the whole assembly kind of repeats the assembly of the Patterson drum itself. And based on the picture on the internet, you cannot really say that this product is high quality, but I was quite surprised that it is, and it works perfectly well without any problems. Additionally, if you use the Patterson drums before, you know that they more thicker than the Yobo drums. And I think if you buy them once, they basically can work forever without any problems. And only one modification what you have, it's a lead with 3 different holes on the side, and I think it is just used to measure the temperature of the solution. So this is one of the 2 hacks to the drum to make it horizontal. So you have a bottom insert and you have a holes to adapt to the sensor of the temperature of the rotation drum. Because I worked with the Patterson tank before, I was familiar how to load it, but I almost forget that it's basically tension friction set, and you can say that the Ego film processor just resembles the lead on a Patterson tank. Honestly, I personally prefer more Yobo system because it has rigid clicks when you load and unload the lead on top, and you can know in the darkness that everything is fine and it will definitely not leak in the connection. And what I was surprised to learn that the Ego film processor actually have a rubber sealing there, and as far as I understand, it's not glued there, it's co-injected with the molded plastic. Which I think it's quite brilliant solution. It's quite stiff and it will last long period of time without any repairs or any problems whatsoever. And after a few removing and inserts, I can definitely say it will not leak and create the perfect sealing, but we will test it anyway as it's set in a manual for the Ego film processor. So I can say that the picture of the Ego film processor a little bit undersell it, so it looks more like a lab equipment and it works really well, especially with this touchscreen panel. And if you worked in a lab, you can say that these touch panels, they quite rigid and they will work for a long period of time without any problem. And they also remove the additional problem of cleaning, so you can just wipe it up with a tissue and everything will be fine without any problems in future. And so far I really like the interface, but we will get back to the interface after I prepare all the chemicals. Unfortunately, they don't really have Bellini Array 4 kits there in the list, but I think it's not a problem because you can easily edit the current version of the preset, and if you don't like it, you can reset it again to the original one. So this is what I was not expecting from this type of tool, that you can change the settings and settings will be saved, and also that you can reset the settings to original. It's quite nice and flexible solution, and it's really great touch for the tool in a darkroom. So Bellini Array 4 kit consists from the developer and from the bleach fix, so it's only 2 solutions and I will make a wash afterwards. For the test prints, I'm not using the final rinse washing with the agents, I just use the water, it's much faster, and only for the final prints I use the special solution which comes with the Bellini kit. And today additionally I want to prove that the film development of C41, it can be messy, but in the same time it's quite stable. And most of the problem creates not from the film, most of the problems create with the software where you scan it. If you watched my previous video, you remember this photo, and this photo is basically quintessence of the Copenhagen. It's a little bit abstract, a little bit contrast light, and in the same time it's tricky colors. And before I thought I screw up a little bit development, and when you use the Negative Lab Pro, you can see that you have quite huge offsets in the color balance. But today I want to show you that it's not so bad when you print the photos in a darkroom from the Array 4 directly from film to the paper. And I'm always quite surprised that the small deviation in the film development or scene create the huge deviations inside the film scanning. But when you print anything on paper, it's quite easy to correct. And I'm thinking that we lacking the proper software tools for the film development to basically just emulate your darkroom. So far, sharpness of the negative looks really fine, and I can start printing and prepare for the test prints. For the test prints, I will use my own product, which called Test Printer TP2. What it allows you to do to focus on top of the test plate, and after that you can sample exactly the same area of the picture. So I'm trying to create the picture close to the leg, and because it has neutral gray colors and the lighting there is quite challenging. So I will sample this area for the different colors, and from there I will see which color I will choose. But first of all, we need to start with the exposure. I start with the settings of 70-70 and start with the setting of time of 8 seconds and make steps of 2. All the operations I will make with my safe light. It's amber type of light, 495 nanometers, with the adjustable power, so you can dim it accordingly to your room size. And it will help me to navigate in the darkness with the film processor, which I never used before in the dark. Before I will start, I want to test the film processor in a daylight and see how I can handle it before I will load the paper. I use the 45 seconds for the developer and 45 seconds for the bleach fix, so it's a little bit overdeveloped and over bleach fixed, but this is how I run my Darkroom with the Array 4 with the Bellini kit. And after first test, I can feel by hand that the reel is rotating inside and I have zero problems. And I think it's impossible to insert the Ego film processor on top of the drum if your pin doesn't fit to the rotation pin inside. I want to test the temperature of the water and how the Ego film processor senses it. And it has 1 degree increments, and for some reason you cannot see it here on the picture on this angle, but on the right bottom corner you have a big indicator of the temperature. In real life everything clearly visible on the screen, and it senses the temperature and shows the temperature of the water inside the drum, which I tested before. The resolution of the temperature there is mostly for indicating, so it has only 1 degree resolution, so it means the precision is ±2 degrees, which is definitely not sufficient for the C41 chemistry if you don't use additional thermometer or additional control system. So let's unpack everything from the drum and prepare my first test prints. I will put everything on the table in this order that I can load it in the darkness with a safe light and put everything in a drum and close the lid, and after that I will just start development. So I load the paper inside the drum, and based on the suggestions in the manual I will use a pre-wash. I use the same temperature water for the pre-wash, basically because I don't want to dry the drum before each print, and it's a lot of moving parts inside, and if you don't make a pre-wash and touch with a wet hand the paper, you will definitely have undeveloped parts. So basically, to avoid that, it's much better to make a pre-wash and only after that make the film development or paper development. For C41 I don't recommend to make any pre-wash because it's diluting your developer and your colors will be muted a little bit, so it's much better to just go straight forward to the developer. But for paper it's quite forgiving, you can do a lot of different stuff without ruining any paper or any test strips. So the next step is a bleach fix. As you can see, I'm a little bit struggling with filling the Ego film processor. But this is my common problem with the drums from Peterson. They have a small hole in the middle but big funnel volume. And in this case I kind of have half volume of the funnel, and for me, at least for my taste, I think the Peterson tanks itself have quite a long filling time of the drum. It told me nothing about the Ego film processor, this is just how the Peterson tanks works in principle. I'm not a big fan how you actually use the Peterson tanks in general, because the filling and unloading of the Peterson tanks usually quite messy, especially with the normal lid of the Peterson tanks. And at the same time, when you try to shoot it to show you how it works, you also create additional mess. But nevertheless, let's see the first result of the test strips what I developed with the Ego film processor. After unloading the inner core, I can see that I have perfect results. As I said before, this is exposure test strip with my test printer, and you have the variety of the 2-second interval on each test print. And advantage of my test printer, as you can see, that I can sample exactly the same spot, and later we will compare different exposures, different colors on exactly the same spot on the picture, and from there we will produce the bigger print. So after several loads and unloads, I already can say I'm familiar with the Ego film processor, and it doesn't really create any problems. I know how to fill it, I know how to unload it, and in reality it doesn't really create a lot of mess with the chemicals if you know how to use it properly. I can only suggest that you need a wide mouth bottles for that, but in general everything works fine if you're not on a rush and just have normal development cycle. Maybe one downside that the rotation of the drum itself a little bit noisy. I cannot say that I saw in my life the quiet rotation of the drums. The Yoba is noisy, the Ego film processor is noisy, basically all the film processors create this type of sound, and I'm definitely not a big fan of that. But what I like about the sound on the Ego processor, that it has a beep sound, and this beep sound it's quite pleasant in person. If you compare it to the Cinestill circulator, for example, I don't really like how it sounds. It's too invasive, it's too loud, but this one works quite nice. Additionally, it creates beeping before you need to unload the chemicals, and you have a kind of a 2 signals on the 2 different time marks. And I also really like this approach because sometimes you're in a different part of the darkroom, you're walking around or you're cleaning something with a tissue, and you can hear the first signal, and after that you just go and change the chemicals for the next one. It's especially important if you're developing C41 and you're developing a lot of films. For example, if you load the big drum and it's not the first development cycle, your bleach fix can be crazy long, up to 10 minutes there. And now what I'm thinking about, it will be really interesting and really nice to actually have the heating supply for the Patterson tank. This system, it's kind of getting your advice to have outer side mounting heater, which will heat up the drum up to 38 degrees, 2 degrees chemistry temperature dropout in a long film developments. It's not really relevant for the paper. As you can see, I get the perfect results every time, and now after testing of the magenta color, I can make the bigger print. This is my normal cycle, how I develop the paper. Usually I load it in a Yobo drum and make a rotation, but as you can see here, you can use any type of sink, you can do it in a bathroom, you need a small amount of space, you can even put it on the floor without any problems. So once again, this is a full cycle how I use Ego film processor for the final print development. I pre-wash it with the water on 35 degrees, I pour it out, and after that I fill it up with the developer. As I said before, washing is quite important for the bigger prints if you don't wanna dry the drum and the reels. Because if you not wet the paper before, your small water drops will appear on paper as underdeveloped zones. But if you pre-wash everything, your development and after that bleach fix works perfectly fine, and you will get more even results on your paper. And because the system is battery powered, you don't really have any cables in the dark, and you can use it in mobile darkrooms, you can use it in a bathroom and any type of small and tight spaces that most of you probably already use. And after a final washing cycle, let's unload the drum and see how my final print looks like. And if we need to make any adjustments, we will discuss it and make it later. In the classic way, you remove the lid, and after that you're removing the funnel, unload the inner reel with the paper. And in my case, I have a little bit of failure here because I forget to move in the filters in my enlarger. And this is my kind of a struggle with the enlarger sometimes with the array for paper, because you forget to move the filters in and you have print which is overexposed and with a red shift. But I quickly redevelop the same print but with the filters on and have almost perfect result, close enough to make the final correction for the final print in my darkroom. As you can see here on the video, I load almost maximum size of the paper in a reel for the Drum 5 system. My print is 20 by 25 because I have a roll paper and cut it in the same way from the roll. Overall, I have no issues with the evenness of the development. The paper looks really great. All the prints so far also looks really great. And I just need to make the final decision on the color balance. And because of using of the test printer, I kind of have a lot of samples of the corrections, and because I know where exact point I make a tests, I can just take a test print and compare the colors, which color I like more and which color I like less. For example, I can see here that the yellow channel with the 80 settings looks fine, but my magenta channel is a little bit too high. An advantage of the small film processor that I can clean everything up separately and put it on a shelf and get back to the printing next time. And after many years, I think I have a lot of really good tools in my darkroom. Some of them I made myself, like this test printer, which allows you to test the samples of the same picture for black and white or color, and it's really pleasant to use its magnetically assisted doors and also really nice and hold the place on your easel. So this combination of the Ego film processor, test printer from the Nordic Lab and the safe light from the Nordic Lab allows me to navigate in the darkness and also make a test print close enough to the final. So for this print, I make small adjustments on the magenta channel, move the color balance a little bit how I like, and redevelop it with the Ego film processor without any problems. Film processor gives me stability and the colors are predictable. If you want to support my channel, you can go in the links below. You can find there the shop with the darkroom equipment and tools. Sometimes I drop there some review units which I no longer use, or my tools, for example, test printer or the safe light, and also my prints from this video. So if you want to support, just not buying anything, you can drop few bucks and I will really appreciate that. And if you know my channel, I always look inside what the people send me for the review. I can see that it's really nice in terms of the design and how the device itself assembled. And what I want to check for you, that's what is the core of this film processor and can you replace the batteries or not? And so far what I can see here that you have the main processor probably is P32 based, soldered directly on a board. All the connection looks pretty nice and I really like the small details and small touches, for example this heat shrink on the motor. Additionally, what you can see there that the PCB itself is shiny, so it means it's conformal coated. It means it will not really rust in the different humid environments like a darkroom. And you will have no problems with the ESP32 processor and the functionality of the tool itself. What I also like the combination of the 3D printed parts and injected molded parts that allows to the company to keep the low costs of the manufacturing. But for example, you can see here that it has gaskets and all places where it's required, like a bolt mounts, you have the sealed gaskets. And now let's summarize what it can do. So this is basically a smart lead for the Patterson tank system. You can attach it on top of any type of Patterson tank, small or big. So basically I have at the moment 3 different tanks, 1 number 5 and 2 number 2s. So you can develop film in these tanks, you can develop them or in a standing position, so you can basically use normal hot bath as I used it before. So it became kind of the temperature control and a timer in the same time, and agitation mechanism because it's rotating the reel inside the drum. And you can also use it in a horizontal position, kind of imitating the Yoba drum system, and it will save the chemicals for sure for C41 process, for example. And what I like about this type of a device, it's really high quality. So I was not expecting this type of quality from the device for this type of price. And you can see that the basic thinking about this device is kind of a helper in the darkroom. And most of the time people think that it's not crazy important to have things like that. And I think if you want to be comfortable in the darkroom, if you want to less struggle, if you want to basically develop your film a little bit more predictable, a little bit more easier, and have more free hands, especially if you're not experienced in a darkroom and you don't really know how to juggle all the chemicals in the same time, I think the Ego film processor is really good choice. And also additionally, what I think that I'm not really in the black and white photography, but this one have more or less the same functions as a test film processor, and basically it can correct the time of the development based on the temperature basically in your room and in your kind of a chemicals. So if you're in a hot environment or if you're in a cold environment, this film processor can adjust the time. As far as I understand from the manual, I don't try it yet, but as far as I understand from the manual, you can connect to this device and you can update the firmware. In the menu, they have the default program and the custom programs. I'm not sure if I can change the custom programs. At least I'm not digging inside the custom program feature yet. But what I can say that even in the standard programs, as you saw in my video, you can change the time for example, for array for chemistry development, agitation, and so on. And you can change from the adjusting time for the temperature to just monitor temperature. And this device will save these settings. And this is what I like about this feature. So I don't really struggle with any type of interface. I don't really struggle with the adjustments and basically turning off the device because it's not darkroom safe, because you have a screen before and after the development of the paper, and it saves the parameters of the time. So I don't need to think about that. And it's the same process. I will run it over and over and over again. So I don't really see any huge disadvantages of this process, and it kind of works without any huge problems. So that's it for today. And if you like my video, I already have a next one on my channel for you. So let's continue watching and see you in the next video.